Hey everybody, I'm required, since we're SEC registered, to tell you to not listen to anything I say about anything, ever. Okay. Good to meet you. My name is Avichal. By day job, I'm a VC, but I spent most of my career as an entrepreneur. Started and sold 2 companies, invested in a bunch of frontier tech. Oh, the images are not loading. That's going to be...
Talk louder, please.
Sure. Okay, some of the images are not loading. So I invested in a bunch of frontier tech, so things like self-driving cars, supersonic airplanes, crypto early, and these days I run a firm called Electric Capital, which is one of the larger crypto-focused VC firms. And depending on what you think crypto is worth, we manage somewhere between 0 and $2 billion. I thought we'd talk really quickly about one of the topics we get inbounded with a bunch of questions about, especially in the last couple of months, which is sort of the intersection of crypto and AI, but this is sort of the generalized meta question, or the meta thing that sort of we have to think about all the time, which is it feels like the world is just getting more and more unpredictable. And in general, humans are really bad at predicting the future. And I think there's a set of sort of fundamental human biases that lead to that. So one is, we're really bad at thinking about low probability events. Like people worry about getting in a plane, but they don't worry about getting in a car. And if you just look at the probabilities, that's totally backwards. And so our intuitions about these low probability events are actually quite wrong. We're primates, and so we don't really deal with large numbers that well. Like everybody knows this is 5 and this is 10. And if you see a pile of bananas, it's just like a pile of bananas. Is it like 200 or is it 600? We don't really know. Our brains are not wired for that. We're really bad at exponential growth because as macrobiological entities, like you didn't wake up as a mammal in the jungle a million years ago, and like there was just a tree when it wasn't a tree yesterday. Like it happens at micro scale, but in like macrobiology, it doesn't happen. So like our brains are not really wired for exponential growth. We don't really intuit it pretty well, and we're really bad at thinking through combinatorial intersections of things. Like when 2 or 3 things are going to happen at a system level, and they all are going to kind of happen at the same time, we don't really have a great sense for the second and third order effects of that. Like, it's really hard for our brains to do that. And so like, there's a lot of stuff happening right now. And actually, because of the nature of technology, it's happening faster and faster and faster. And so I thought I would talk about the thing that I get asked about most recently, which is, hey, AI is super hot. Is crypto relevant at all? Why did we give you so much money? Like, let's talk about this. And I actually think that people are really underestimating the intersection of these 2 things, and they actually both need each other. And so I thought I would just talk through really quickly a set of examples that make it a little bit more obvious how these things are going to intersect in my mind. So, we already know developers can create AI that will know how to write code. And so I think these AI are going to write distributed applications that run on distributed crypto networks. And users will use these applications that are created by these autonomous AI agents. And these AI bots will be able to make money from those applications. If you think about it, these AI don't have a physical form. They don't really exist in a jurisdiction, right? They exist in the cloud. So they can't really KYC and get a bank account. So like, what does it mean for an AI to make money? Well, it probably has to use some sort of decentralized system where it can essentially spin up a command line wallet to receive money. And we already kind of have version 1 of this with smart contracts. Those are really, really simple pieces of code. They're not quite an AI, but they're counterparties to a transaction that can control billions of dollars. And then what's going to happen is these AI bots are going to be able to pay other AI to run code, right? On a per AI microtransaction kind of a system, AI is going to pay AI, which will likely have to happen on these sort of decentralized payment networks. That's not to say it has to use Ethereum or anything. It could use US dollars, but it's not, sort of from like an architecture perspective, it makes intuitive sense that that's probably what they'll do. They're also going to pay AI-generated social media accounts to promote these decentralized applications. That's how, if you've ever listened to a podcast, you've probably gotten like a VPN ad. And so these AI are going to start paying other AI to do marketing and promotion. All of this happens on these like low-cost, decentralized micro payment transaction networks. And then AI is also going to pay humans all over the physical world to do stuff, because actually building, like this is like 5 or 10 million years of evolution for all my digits to do this and be able to have a bunch of touch sensors and heat sensors and pain sensors and be able to be as dexterous as it is. And so instead of creating a bunch of robots, AI should just pay a bunch of humans using these currencies to go do stuff in the real world, because you can just pay a TaskRabbit to go pick up something. And then if you put yourselves in the shoes of a small country, this gets really interesting, because you're like, well, the US doesn't recognize these AI yet. Right? It's not an LLC, and it's not a C Corp, and it's not a human with a social security number. And so that's an opportunity, right? It's actually not crazy for small countries around the world, like in Estonia or Singapore, to start giving personhood to AI and say, okay, this is sort of a person. And so we'll give you some sort of status, kind of like a corporation, TBD. We haven't really had to think about non-human organizations that can control capital since like the invention of the limited liability corporation. Joint stock corporations were created in like 1650, if anybody knows the history of these things. And it took us like 200 years to figure out how to regulate them. So it wasn't a king that gave you a charter. It was like in 1850, governments were like, oh yeah, this is useful. We should be able to pool capital together. And so small countries will figure that out. And because it's going to be easier for AI to pay citizens in that country, it's actually a jobs program. Like if you can convince an AI to bring $10 billion into your country, like you could any corporation, it's a way to incentivize them to pay people in your country to do stuff. And this is a little bit of a joke, but Forbes loves making lists. So Forbes will probably make a richest AI in the world list because actually some of these AI will control tens of billions of dollars. They already, some of the smart contracts on Ethereum already do. And of course, some people are going to push back. Some people are already pushing back on this new world. And so, you get deep fakes, you get generated media. The cost of creating fake media basically goes to zero. And so it turns out the solution to that is going to have human-created media have some sort of cryptographic signature baked in to the media that's created to prove that it was created by a human, and it's not a deepfake and has not been modified ever since, which is exactly the same technology yet again. And this extends to anything that you do with your device, right? When you're making a call to your mom, she needs to know that it's not a deep fake voice demanding a ransom, and so there has to be a cryptographic handoff, likely on some sort of decentralized registry of phone numbers to prove that it's actually you. And some people I think will take this even farther. What? 1 minute? Okay, some people will take this even farther, and they're only going to want artisanal human content, which you're going to have to prove that you're human in order for you to be able to sell your artisanal art to people. Some people will say, well, I don't want my data used by these AI, and I want to get paid for it, which yet again is going to require these cryptographic primitives and decentralized systems for the money to flow around and for the provenance of these data systems to be able to say this content was created by this entity and they deserve payment if you're going to use it in your models. I'll sort of skip some of the more details there, but I think the point I'm trying to make here is that once you start thinking combinatorially about these things, it becomes really, really obvious that AI and crypto are basically two sides of the same coin. Like they actually need each other in very interesting ways. AI needs crypto as infrastructure, and cryptography and distributed systems actually are a solution to a lot of problems that are created by AI. And this is just one of the intersections that's happening. And so as we think combinatorially about all of these things, there's just going to be a crazy, crazy, crazy amount of stuff that happens over the next 10 years. And so not only, I would argue, is the world getting much more unpredictable, it's also getting much, much more interesting as all of those human biases come to bear, and we're probably dramatically underestimating how interesting the world is going to be over the next 10 years. Okay, I'll stop talking now.
Ooh, thank you.
Thank you.
This is a bit of sort of a whimsical question, but
sure.
Just so into this in this AI to AI economy, what are the most interesting markets you imagine existing there?
It's a really good question. I think a lot of it, and there are going to be 2 or 3 early ones. One is going to be model training of some sort. There's a feedback loop that exists for AI, which is I want to be more powerful. And so how do you buy more compute? How do you buy more resources? How do you buy more data? In my opinion, is probably one of the first early sets of markets. And then delegation of key, I need some data. I'm going to just pay you for the data via API to API interfaces. Those are probably 2. I'm sure there are a lot more, but those are 2 that come to mind for me.
Well, yeah, one more and then.
How would you successfully prove human creation when, for example, an AI could just pay TaskRabbits to get their stamp of human authenticity on it?
Now we're talking. I don't know. That's a great question. Yeah, that's a really good question. And that opens up the question also, a related question of what does it even mean to have artisanal human-created art, right? Does it need to be 100% handmade? Can I use an AI tool along the way to make the art? So I don't know the answer to that, but it's a great question.
Okay, what is the challenge that you encourage other people to solve?
To solve or think about?
Yeah, to think about.
To think about. Well, one thing I've been thinking about.
Let's start with thinking about it.
One thing I've been thinking about, my first startup was in education, using machine learning plus education to personalize content delivery. And I don't know not the implementation of education, the tooling is a little bit more obvious to me of how AI will work, but how should we think about preparing our children for a world where you have superhuman intelligent AI and quantum computers and cryptography and supersonic airplanes and AR and VR? like as all of these things come together, like what is the purpose of the education system for, if you're like a 3-year-old today, by the time you're going to college, the world looks really, really, really different than it does today. And I haven't met anybody who has a good sort of framework for here's how we should be thinking about educating our children for the world as it will be in 15 years.
All right, small task to solve today. Thanks.
Oh, sorry, it's not my computer. Thank you.